When goats make films, who will they think in their closing credits? This might seem like a silly question, but today, given that we're here to contemplate impossible things, I'm going to try to convince you that closing credits matter, and so do goats. Over the years, people, film scholars and critics, have taken to talking about films as if one important person controls the entire production, the director. We see it and hear it in language all the time. A film by Alfred Hitchcock, for example, or James Cameron's Titanic. The central importance people assign to the director recalls our notion of romantic artistic genius, the idea that art is envisioned and created by one powerfully original mind. But if we're people who stick around when the closing credits roll, maybe looking for a friend's name, maybe searching for the title of a song, maybe trying to figure out who that familiar-looking supporting actor was, we know this notion is limited at best. Film credits are a hugely long list of people involved in a cinematic production. Best boys, key grips, production managers, location scouts, assistant camera operators, editors, sound recordists, Foley artists, and the list goes on and on. But what if that list isn't long enough? If we study the credits closely, we see that the scrolling list is all about human participants in a film production. Yes, you're thinking, so what's the problem? The problem, I think, is that our constant focus on humans as actors, and here I mean actors in a wider sense, as active agents who make things happen, that focus parallels a tendency that we have to spin our stories as if human beings were the only important creatures on the planet, and as if we can separate our fates and our future from the fates and futures of the countless other beings that inhabit the Earth with us. Closing credits of the traditional kind are one place where we quite literally discredit the role that non-human life plays on life on the planet. This kind of thinking, this kind of storytelling has led us into the era that some scientists and environmentalists are calling the Anthropocene, a new geological period where human beings have had a significant impact on planet and the environment, an impact that can quite literally be read in the Earth's surface. Now, I'm not a scientist, but a scholar of literature and cinema, and specifically of Italian. From my perspective, I know that we have to start spinning different stories about our stories. We have to understand that films, books, TV shows, and all kinds of cultural productions are not uniquely the products of human imagination, but rather evidence of the way that our imagination is formed when it intersects with other non-human things. Now, if we look closely at cinema, we find that it's doing this. It's living a collaborative relationship with landscapes, technologies, and all kinds of non-human actors. And some films do this while simultaneously telling stories of these kinds of cohabitations. Ever so briefly today, I'm going to tell you a story that unfolds a series of relationships linking cinema and the non-human world. And I'm going to begin from the point of view of collaborations. So take Le Quattro Volte, The Four Times, a 2010 Italian film made over the course of 3 years in Calabria, Italy. It was released in the US with no subtitles because, in fact, there's almost no discernible human dialogue. The film is based on the Pythagorean notion of metempsychosis, or the passage of the soul through animal, vegetable, and mineral forms. And it tells interlocking stories of a goat herd, a goat, a tree, and a piece of charcoal. And I know what you're probably thinking, but it's actually amazingly entertaining. This can, in part, be attributed to the critical role that goats played in the film's creation. I interviewed various members of the small human production crew, who all spoke of long hours spent observing goats and their behaviors. What does a goat find entertaining? What might baby goats do when left alone in a stable while their mothers are out grazing? What will a goat do if it loses the rest of the herd? What will it do if it gets into your kitchen? Up to this point, the filmmaking crew resembles a troupe of animal behaviorists observing dynamics and making hypotheses about what will result. But in creating a story from and around this information, the game changes slightly. In Le Quattro Volte, the loose narrative structure reshaped itself around the goats' own narratives, flexing and changing to open to those things the goats might do, like climb on the kitchen table and knock down whatever they find there. So in this sense, goats really became co-writers of the script, and the film attuned itself to the voices of the non-human actors. In fact, in my interview with a sound recordist who had an incredibly important role to play in this film with no human dialogue, They said that the goats gifted themselves with spontaneous moments that human actors never could have. For example, the unexpected sound of one goat sneezing was perhaps the sweetest sound in the entire film. The director, Michelangelo Framartino, originally didn't want his name listed on publicity for the film, saying that his directorial role was productively weakened as other non-human and human actors took up critical creative parts. And in this extraordinary film, the non-human does get credit for the central role it plays, as we see in the credits: witch sight, the dog, the goats, the tree, and charcoal, acknowledging the multiform actors that created it. So Le Quattro Volte is really an exceptional and collaborative example of cinematic practice, a transformative idea of what cinema beyond the human might look like. Unfortunately, though, collaboration is not always the order of the day in our contemporary world, and cinema has also been instrumental in documenting conflict. So this is the next thing that I'm going to talk to you about. Alongside examples of collaboration, Italy also offers examples of crisis in the relationships linking humans to the non-human world. One powerful example can be found in the region of Campania, outside the city of Naples, not so far from where Le Quattro Volte was filmed. This is a landscape that filmmakers, and especially documentarians, have been focusing on of late because of the activities of a group known as the eco-mafia. So just a bit of background. Eco-mafia is a term that was coined by an Italian environmental NGO to refer to organized crime when its activities harm the environment. Some of the most prevalent examples of work of the eco-mafia involve disposing of waste, which is a huge profitable business. Toxic waste disposal is the most widespread crime of eco-mafia and generates multiple billions of euros in profit. One of the most powerful groups in the Neapolitan crime syndicate, known as the Camorra, reportedly has a hand in all areas of waste disposal in the region. The crime bosses charge rock-bottom prices to illegally dispose of industrial and municipal waste from Italy and around Europe. They dump, burn, and bury it in the countryside, and they have also mixed it with fertilizer to spread it in fields where food is grown and animals graze. Contaminants leach into the groundwater, become airborne, enter foodways, and dumping has been particularly prominent in the areas known for the production of buffalo milk mozzarella, San Marzano tomatoes, and other celebrated food products of Campania, like the ones found on this lovely pizza. An epidemiological study of the blood of residents in the area found elevated levels of dioxins, highly toxic substances that can cause reproductive and developmental problems, damage the immune system, interfere with hormones, and cause cancer. This study associates accumulation of the most dangerous dioxins with the consumption of vegetables and mozzarella. So now this is where cinema comes back into the picture. Filmmakers and documentarians have quite literally placed themselves on the front lines of the struggles against trash, dumps, and eco-mafia. Films about the eco-mafia have proliferated in recent years, seeking to call attention to a crisis that's about human disregard for our embedment in the world that surrounds us. One of the most vivid ways filmmakers illustrate this crisis takes us back to this world of small ruminants, and this time we're going to look at sheep instead of goats. Sheep farmers in one film describe baby sheep on their farm that began to appear with an appalling array of deformities. Heads shaped like large, flat discs, swollen tongues, almost unrecognizable. We see farmers loading dead sheep into garbage bags and describing how their entire flock will be killed to eliminate the dioxin found in the sheep's milk. In a critical move, these humans trace the lines of connectedness between the sheep and themselves. The animals they know are biomonitors, offering clues about the health of an entire ecosystem. Those sick, congenitally deformed and dying sheep are a wake-up call for the humans who depend on Campania's rich agricultural tradition for health and for culinary pleasure. Our fate is the same as that of the sheep, they observe grimly, recognizing common air, water, and food supplies, and they ask when the sheep that they care for are slaughtered because of dioxin in their milk. Why don't they kill us too? The fate of environment and the human inhabitants are intertwined, and in solidarity with the sheep, these films illustrate this crucial fact. So cinema is an instrument to bring attention to invisible and forgotten realities. But cinema itself is material, and cinema is industrial. If we take seriously this notion of our material entanglement with the world, the fate that we share with the beings and objects around us, we need to go one step further and examine the medium of cinema itself. Film tells stories, but film needs resources too, including non-human resources to do so. So what kinds of resources does film need? Few people realize that film, celluloid, depends in another material way on the relationship between the human and non-human animal worlds. As film scholar Scott McDonald tells us, the light-sensitive silver salts that create the visible image when they are exposed to light are suspended in a thin layer of gelatin, and one of the chief ingredients is collagen. Collagen is produced by boiling the bones and tissues of animals, and particularly the skins, bones, and hides of cattle, pigs, and sheep. Le Quattro Volte, which was filmed using 35mm film stock, thus owes another debt to the non-human world, as its images are quite literally imprinted on the residues of animal bodies and projected across them into the darkened theater. Even in our digital age, when fewer films are being made on celluloid, most computers and other digital equipment rely on stearic acid, which comes from animal byproducts, to stabilize them against heat. And then there's one more material connection we need to make with films and filmmaking, and it's a connection that touches our bodies and shows why this story is such an urgent one. Like trash dumped in fields by the eco-mafia, film and filmmaking materials are quite toxic. As Richard Maxwell and Toby Miller demonstrate, Kodak Park in Rochester, New York, which supplied 80% of the global supply of film stock at the end of the 20th century, was a primary source of pathogens in New York State, especially dioxins. Workers making film stock were exposed to acids and vapors and developed respiratory problems. And then, back in Italy, in the countryside around Naples, land of eco-mafia, old VHS tapes have been a preferred means for setting piles of trash on fire. Roberto Saviano's book, Gomorra, the key text that exposed the workings of eco-mafia, describes one of the criminal techniques for burning trash, using obsolete VHS tapes as fuses. He tells us that Roma children, members of the nomadic groups that live throughout Europe, are offered small sums by the Camorra to set trash on fire. They wrap the piles with VHS tape, pour gas over them, twist the tape to make a fuse, and set the whole thing on fire. The dense black smoke that emerges contaminates the countryside with dioxins. So in Campania, where cinema is helping make people aware of the problem of eco-mafia, it's also contributing to the problem. Obsolete technologies go onto the waste pile, pass into the air, and in the form of tiny airborne dioxin particles, enter the bodies of Roma children and grazing sheep, settle into the food supply, become a part of the body of the landscape and its inhabitants. Cinema, like so many other things around us, is part of a cycle of resource extraction, consumption, and waste. So make no mistake, film is part of us, but sometimes it might even be threatening our longevity, not to mention the health of the planet. So my story suggests that negotiating cultures and negotiating stories is of vital importance. The kind of culture that can disregard animal life and landscapes can disregard human lives just as easily. That's why we need to be actively involved in advocating for different kinds of stories. This is a proposal for a new way to think about things, but ultimately it proposes a new way to act too. If we're going to change course and work towards a more sustainable future for the planet, we desperately need new stories. This is one of the most powerful ways that we have to change minds. If you take seriously the notion that you can't separate human actors from the networks that connect them to the more than human world, the ties that bind us to other non-human actors of all kinds, you can't continue to discredit the things they are telling us. You have to approach your world and approach them with gratitude and respect, with an awareness of the way that you are a piece of a complex puzzle and not the apex of a pyramid. So, you might need to seriously consider the notion of goats as filmmakers and ask yourself, would they thank you in their closing credits? Thank you.